Good afternoon. My name's David Knox. I have MSA, and I have a hot topic for you today. Really, if you can't stand the heat, get out the kitchen because that's literally what this is about. Finding out the hard way that heat and MSA doesn't always go together. A couple of examples. 2 years ago in Jamaica, I burned my feet because my skin was falling off, blisters and everything. Because I did not feel the heat of the sun in Jamaica. How this could be? Fast forward back to this weekend, we're going back to Jamaica. But last week we just got off the cruise ship, my family and my mother. It hit me when we got off onto the beach of Perfect Day, Coco Cay for Royal Caribbean Celebrity. We were outside, and Mom got a cabana because you got to keep your son out of the sunlight because heat and MSA does not go together. And I looked at my daughters. We have the palest, whitest daughter in the world who does not tan at all. She's incapable of tanning. And we have the other child who tans completely and gets second-degree burns on the cruise. And, she is toasty. On top of that, we also have my wife, who's originally from Mexico, who can take the heat, no pun intended. Now, I've always been good at the heat. I mean, there was one time in Mexico where I really had very bad burns. The pigment on my skin, on my shoulder is completely different than the rest of my body. You would never notice unless you looked very carefully. But as we were sitting in the cabana, we were walking back and forth for ice cream cones. My daughters and I asked and I said, "Can you feel the heat?" My oldest, who had a sunburn on her back, was not her front. She's like, "Oh yes, I can feel the sun. It's very hot. I think it's like 90-something degrees that day." I looked at the youngest daughter and I said, "Can you feel the heat?" She said, "Absolutely." And I told him, I said, "I can't feel the heat from the sun rays, right? I can't feel it. It feels like a dry 75-degree day, but maybe 70 degree. I mean, no humidity, no nothing." I had to remember I got myself in trouble a couple of times, very bad burns from not understanding. I burnt my hands a few times from grabbing on plates and pots and stuff that are too hot, which is why my wife carries my food to me, when it's cool enough. Because I will go grab something and not notice right away that it's hot. And I wondered why. But it hit me more importantly on his last cruise, going back to this weekend. I wanted to know why I could not feel heat, but I could feel cold. Now, for reference, I've only not felt cold one time when I was unclogging the drain outside when it rained really, really hard. It was like 36-degree water. What was it? Snow. And I couldn't feel the cold until I got inside. The cold feeling not showing up happened only one time. But I noticed as I have my shoulder replacement surgery, stuff up at heating pads on my back and heating pads being microwave, I'm starting to sense less and less of the heat. And that's it's a very sensitive area, like the neck, for instance. And I wonder why. So let me show you exactly what I came up with. Something pretty simple. So I asked the question, how does multiple system atrophy cause you to lose heat sensation but not cold? And it was very clear to me. I bring up my teleprompter that's in the background now. Great. It became very clear to me that we have to take a look at the beginning of why. Now, for everyone wondering what I'm talking about, of course, I'm talking about multiple system atrophy, which we all know is a neurodegenerative disease, which means more likely not fatal. In this case, in the United States, it's 100% fatal. But it attacks the central nervous system, key word, which controls how a person moves, and their autonomic nervous system, which controls voluntary functions such as blood pressure, digestion, blood pressure, things like that. So, um, another issue that also arises is how the body senses temperatures. Somebody with MSA can have an internal body temperature that's up to 1 degree higher or lower than what's actually reading what was on thermometer. And I knew that in the hospital when I had pneumonia, the temperature was way off. So you can actually take a temperature and not have a fever, but you in fact do have a low grade, too hot or too low fever, or it's too cold. And doctors will not notice that because, the body changes the temperature up to a degree. So how do we feel temperature, right? Our ability to feel temperature, to sense temperature, keyword sense, relies on specialized nerve fibers in our skin and body. These are called or many fibers, but these are called C fibers. C fibers, letter C, are myelinated, not protected. Slow conducting nerve fibers that primarily detect heat and burning pain. Alpha delta fibers, looks like an AO, but it's not. Alpha delta fibers are thinly myelinated, faster conducting fibers that mainly detect cold and sharp pain, right? So C fibers have no myelination. That means they have no insulation, which gives us our heat and burning sensation, and it's the slowest path back to the spinal cord to the brain. The alpha delta fibers are the thin layer myelination, but they are insulated. So they show us our extreme cold, sharp pain. They go very quick. Kind of makes you wonder why heat is slow for. Maybe because the body wants to have a suntan. I don't know, right? But these are the two fibers that we are detect heat and cold that we want to talk about with MSA. Now, how does MSA affect sensation? Well, MSA is does progressive damage to both the central and peripheral nervous system, right, inner and outer. However, the small nerve fibers in the periphery, especially the C fibers, are particularly vulnerable. This selective damage leads to a specific pattern of sensory loss, right? So one of those is loss of heat sensation. Because C fibers are more likely to degenerate, lose the ability to sense heat. My career was in telecommunications, and I can tell you right now, if your fiber optic, coaxial cable, phone lines, so anything that you have in your house that's not insulated, that whatever's going through it will leak out, especially telecommunications. You have to have insulation. In this case, it's myelination. You have to have a substance to allow the signals to. Well, if you have a type C, we have type C fibers for heat and burning sensations that have no insulation at all covering them. It's like walking out into a blizzard with no coat, with no clothes, period, right? It's that extreme. Because the alpha delta fibers actually have myelination, they're less affected, and the ability to sense cold often remains intact. And for reference, you can see what part of the body on the spine affects what part of your nerve cells, nerve lines goes throughout your body. So you can tell that looking at the left, those green dots, the lines around the green dots represent myelination, insulation of the nerve cells as they're traveling along. So C absolutely has none, and that's our biggest issue with heat. So let's walk through how the temperature signal travels to your brain, from your skin to your brain. Okay, this is a diagram I showed of the axon cell of the nerve is in the middle, and these lines are the same thing, the myelination or the insulation that protects it. We have an issue with that. Temperature signals travel through the skin to your brain in this order. Receptors in the skin, which are free nerve endings, detect changes in temperature to the touch. The first order neuron is the one that's the signal that's traveling along the nerve fiber to the spinal cord. So from the cell, it goes to the highway all the way to your spinal cord. It hits the second order neuron. That signal crosses into the opposite side of the spinal cord and it sends it to the brain. After the second order neuron, the third order neuron is a signal reaches the thalamus and then the sensory cortex of the brain, where it's interpreted as heat, hot, or cold. So basically, to condense that down, the pathway to the brain is skin, spinal cord, brainstem, thalamus, sensory cortex of the brain, in that order. And this diagram I stole from the Wikipedia page. Thank you very much. Basically, in a nutshell, shows the issues with having on the right-hand side my insulated nerve cells, axons, and the left showing nothing. Well, normally the heat sensation is slower than cold by default, and the signal will get from A to B. But when you have MSA, it attacks the C fibers for heat and cold, for heat that has no insulation to begin with, and that whole process starts to break down or get even slower. It's like having gaps in your water hose outside. It's not going to work very well, right? It will work, but not very effective. There you go. So why is heat sensation lost first? Well, Again, C fibers are smaller and unmyelinated, making them more susceptible to damage from neurodegenerative diseases like MSA and other diseases. Alpha delta fibers are slightly larger and myelinated, such as insulation, providing some protection and allowing them to function longer even as the disease progresses. So at some point, we will start to lose our cold sensations, but it will not be before the hot sensation. That's just the way it goes. And here, this is a good graph they had that shows that the functions of the fibers. Alpha deltoids are primary mediators of initial sharp pain response to injury, right? They also alpha deltoid fibers also contribute to the sensation of cold. They can trigger withdrawal reflexes like touch. You ever touched dry ice before? I have by accident. Not very fun. Very, very quick pulling your hand back. These are autonomic responses to painful stimuli that helps protect the body from further harm. So what makes this alpha deltoid fibers distinct from C fibers? Well, alpha deltoid fibers are distinct from C fibers, which are also involved in pain transmission. Alpha deltoid are myelinated and are protected. They transmit pain signals faster than C fibers, which are not protected. And alpha deltoid fibers are primarily responsible for initial sharp pain, while C fibers are involved in later dull burning pain sensation, which is why I come home sometimes and I have sunburn and don't realize it, whether or not I'm here in Griffith, Indiana, or I am in the South Caribbean. You just don't feel these things. Interesting. There's a picture of cells. Again, loss of heat sensation is because the C fibers are being attacked first. This is the order of operations I talked about earlier about how it gets to your body. In spinal cord, brainstem, thalamus, sensory cortex. We still get sensations. Again, people with MSA, you don't lose everything. I mean, there are times like it could paralyze. It can paralyze a part of your body or disrupt it completely. It's true, but we just don't one day wake up and it's just not talking because our cells aren't sending signals anymore. We just don't lose the hot sensation overnight. I still feel heat, not as good as I used to, and not as often. So it's not like it starts. You completely lose these sensations overnight. It doesn't work that way. It does when you later progress in MSA after a few years, potentially, all right, depending on how long you had symptoms for. So heat will go first, followed by cold. Patients with MSA often report that they can no longer feel heat, but they can still sense cold. Quantitative sensory testing confirms that warm detection thresholds are more frequently abnormal than cold detection thresholds in these patients with MSA. So, what can you do? MSA will affect the heat first, then the cold. My conclusion is that the MSA causes selective damage to the small C fibers responsible for, alphabet, beta, like cap, I don't see cap, I can't remember what it is. But the C fiber is responsible for heat sensation while sparing the 8 alpha delta fibers that detect cold. This explains why patients may lose the ability to feel heat, but still sense cold. Understanding these mechanisms not only help us care for patients, but also deepens our appreciation for the complexity of the human nervous system. I want to again be very clear that my goal here was to I know something with me, with heat, and it never hit me why. I could blame it on MSA as much as I wanted to. I could say it was another disease, or I'm just my skin's rough or thick or whatever. But being aware of your body, being aware of your sensations. I tell my wife all the time, like, I can't feel this or I can't feel that, or this is tingling, that's tingling, pain here, pain there. I don't tell her just to nag, to let her know that I have a weird sensation. That's how we knew we had pneumonia. Not because I could feel pneumonia, because my whole body was hurting unbelievably. It was a different sensation I haven't had in a while since the first pneumonia. So, you know, how often are we going to get hurt from cold versus heat? Good question. You probably won't normally with MSA go outside in a snowstorm or a blizzard. Not with MSA. Not even because it's cold or snowing, because you might slip and trip and fall. But if there's no snow and ice outside, no rain, it's nice and hot like it is right now in the Midwest. You are more likely to go outside and like cut the grass, drain the pool, clean the air conditioner. That's what my daughter yesterday. You're more likely to go outside and do things that you would never do in the wintertime. So the greater risk for patients with MSA is heat. And we were going to lose that first. Once MSA has gone from has affected the brain and it's gone further into the spinal cord, before we start to have these issues. We can still sense heat until probably the day we die because there is some type of connectivity still there. MSA will start to eat most of it away because as MSA it deteriorates, atrophy. That's what the word means literally. So please, if you have MSA, even Parkinson's, please be especially careful to heat. Grabbing ceramic plates that you microwave is not a great idea. Ceramic plates in the microwave, they are so hot because there's still water trapped from when they dried them out. They did not dry them out completely before they made them very nice and glossy. Therefore, that's why your ceramic plates get hot when you heat them up. Your ceramic plate will be 200 degrees and your food will be 60. It's things like that you have to know. So you have to be very careful when you take your first bite of hot food, or you have a steak platter or whatever. You have to be very careful. When you go out in the sun and you cannot feel that sun on your skin like you normally do, you need to take protective, protective, cautions. Be careful. My wife was like, "Well, I put sunscreen on you." You can still feel the heat through sunscreen, right? I mean, you can feel it on your whole body, your head. You can feel the heat rays. It's something new for us that we have to learn to manage. I know that heat is not good for blood pressure, maintaining blacking out, things like that for me. But I didn't realize I was going to lose complete control of heat with MSA. So please, if you have a loved one or friend, relative, anyone that has MSA or Parkinson's, heat is one of the first sensations that's also going to go. And you have to be extremely careful with it. I appreciate you. Love you to death. There will be another video. And stay strong, but stay MSA strong. I'll see you soon.